Welcome back to No Hack Season 3. In the latest episode, I had the pleasure of talking to Sam Dunning. Sam is a B2B SEO expert, founder of Breaking B2B, and host of the Breaking B2B podcast. He'll tell you what the secret is to good SEO, and it's the money keywords, how he outranked HubSpot in 50 days, but also how his podcast helps drive his business. Enjoy the episode. Sam, welcome to No Hacks Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Same here. But before we start, my producer is just telling me that SEO has just died. So can I get your feedback on that?
Yeah, it did in fact die back in, I think it was 1972 or 1973 from memory. Yeah, it was quite a slow and painful death, along with ABM, along with cold calling, along with cold email, along with paid ads, and along with pretty much any go-to-market strategy. So everything's dead now. So there's not really any point in running a business because there's no way to go to market. I'm just kidding.
It's all AI these days. So there's nothing else. But why do people keep saying that? Why does everyone keep saying SEO is dead? Not everyone.
Well, it depends where you're getting the information from, I guess. Because if it's a platform like LinkedIn or similar, then it's 99% sure that it's someone that sells something that's the opposite to SEO, like some kind of cold outbound email or AI generated outreach, or maybe they sell paid media or LinkedIn ads. So they pretty much go against organic search as a channel. So that's usually what I find. Not always, or maybe it's some folks that found an AI hack to rank page 1 in like 2 seconds. And now they say SEO is dead because their plugin is like the be all and end all. That's usually what I see.
Good for them. Good for them. Like let them keep doing that while the real people and real experts do the real work. Okay, so you're specialized in B2B SEO. That is like, of course, Breaking B2B podcast. You're all about B2B. What are some of the common misunderstandings in SEO, specifically in B2B, but broader even in 2025?
Yeah, there's loads. There's loads really. So I suppose to start with, one of the biggest practical issues is that folks still to this day feel that SEO is all about traffic. So there's something I call the traffic trap, quote unquote, where even to this day, B2B marketers, B2B founders think that SEO is all about getting as much traffic as possible to your site. So they make quite a common mistake. A lot of folks do it by focusing on what's called informational based or top funnel keywords. So instead of focusing on search terms, keywords, or topics that are going to be pretty likely to drive whatever your conversion point is, whether that's going for booked calls or sign-ups for your SaaS or demo requests, instead they focus on more vanity-based metrics like traffic, and usually those high traffic keywords are kind of informational-based queries like things like what is a KPI or how to build a website or what is a CRM, when in reality, if someone's searching for something that basic, that informative, they're not going to want to demo your product. They're not going to want to speak to a salesperson. They're not going to be anywhere near kind of that level of intent to take some kind of sales action. So it's a bit of a traffic trap. And like I said, those ranking for those articles, yeah, it can yield a ton of traffic. But the issue is someone's probably just going to land on your blog post or your landing page, get the info they need and bounce off, or at best, grab a quick lead magnet or something else. And the other downside of focusing on that content solely is that it's being wiped out by AI overviews on Google. So anyone that's not familiar with that, that basically means the top half above the fold before you scroll, it gives an instant summary to your answer. So you don't have to click through to a blue link and go onto an external website and click onto the page. So there is a place for top funnel content in SEO, but when it's really thin, light, and kind of easy to answer, it's not necessarily the best play anymore. So that's one.
That is a very, very good answer to that question. I want to ask you why. Why do people focus on those, should we call them lazy keywords and lazy SEO efforts?
Yeah, and it's not always with the bad intentions. So I think it's mainly just because folks think that, all right, my website might have a roughly 2 to 3% conversion rate. And in theory, if I can drive all this traffic to it, surely it's going to ramp up conversions on the back end. So booked calls, demos, signups, whatever our go-to-market is. Like, it's kind of coming it from that logic rather than the logic of what is our dream client actually going to search for on Google when they're ready to speak to a salesperson, when they're directly searching for our offer, when they're comparing us to alternative solutions, or they're comparing vendors against each other, or they're searching for crisp and specific problems that we help solve. So not really thinking it from a dream client or an ICP perspective.
But that requires more work.
Exactly.
More research work. And no one likes to do research. And if I've learned anything working in digital, no one likes research. Everybody wants just to know the answer immediately. So that's one. What is another misunderstanding today?
Yeah, let's go. So one is that it takes 6 to 12 months to see results, which is something that
I couldn't resist. Okay, please continue. But yes.
Agencies love selling that. And it's not all lies, right? Like, I can understand agencies want to get hefty retainers from their clients. Don't blame them. Cash in the bank is nice. But it's not always the case. So it can be the case if you're going for super difficult terms where there's monsters, there's giant competitors. Like, one that I often give an example is trying to rank for something like calendar scheduling software or best calendar scheduling tools. And you go against competitors like Calendly or Chili Piper that have been in the game a long time and have healthy budgets. But when you get niche and more specific, i.e. go after terms which we can dive into, like competitor alternatives or crisp specific problems you solve, or specific offerings like your solution type for a certain industry, and that kind of stuff, which can still have a lot of value. It can still drive inbound sales conversations. When you go for those more niche and specific terms, you can rank for those as quick as 90 days, even on kind of fresher, newer websites. It can be done. So I think that's a bit of a misconception, that it's always the case that it's always going to take 6 to 12 months regardless of the scenario, when that's not really true. There's often quite a lot of quick wins that you can drive even for those bottom of the funnel opportunities.
Right. But they will be layered. You're going for the quick wins while you're also working for the 6 to 12 months keywords that take more time. And they are supposed to support and help each other in ranking and lifting the website.
Yeah, that's it. So that's it. Like, the crux to a good strategy is kind of working out what will be the quick wins for the next 90 days, 3 months, what will be the kind of year or 18-month long goal, and what will be somewhere in between.
Right.
And kind of putting that all together in the sense that when you're building out that topic and content calendar, you know what you're working at short, medium, and long term, as well as the other items that you're working on and off of the website.
That is a lot of work and that is a lot of planning. But again, same in CRO, which is where I spent most of my career. If you don't do research, if you don't do the planning, no one cares what you're testing on the website, because you don't know what you're testing and why you're testing it. Let's talk about some of the unconventionals, your non-traditionals, against the grain ideas you may have in today's SEO. So not these common misunderstandings. What is your take that not a lot of people agree with?
Oh, yeah. Quite a few. So one is that every company should do SEO. I don't think that at all. I think a lot of companies should not do SEO, especially in my space, which is like B2B and SaaS. As there's a few prime examples when SEO is not a good fit. One is if you are in a new category, so you're selling a product or offering or service that folks just don't know about yet because it's a new concept. So no one's going to Google searching for that product, searching for that offer, or searching for that solution because it's a brand new concept. Perhaps it's a new SaaS or it's a new AI tool, whatever that you develop. Google is not a smart bet. You're way better off understanding, goes back to your point about customer research, where does my dream client actually spend their time, and how can I start educating them around the problem we solve, around the issues of not solving it, and start entertaining them, start providing value, then position our product as a solution, then start building mind share around that offer. And eventually in a year or so's time, they might start searching for the category type. So that's one. One is that I suppose we talked about just now that it takes a long time and that kind of stuff. And along that kind of vein, like there's a few scenarios when SEO doesn't make a ton of sense. And another situation like that is if you are, this happens a lot in SaaS, so if you're VC backed or if you're funded and you're kind of being pressed to drive results, drive sales bookings, signups, calls as soon as possible, then it might not be a smart move, i.e. you've got to ramp up inbound demos significantly in the next month or two then you'd be way better off investing your cash into paid media, whether that's Google paid search or paid review sites or listing sites or stuff like that, or hitting outbound super hard or looking to upsell existing customers. So those are a couple off the top of my mind, but happy to dive into some
Those
others.
are good. Especially SEO is not for everyone. Coming from an SEO person, it has more weight than if it just was we talked about it at the beginning of the interview. There are people who are going to say things about SEO is dead. You don't need SEO. No, you do, but there are some cases when it's not necessarily the best idea. Now, the main thing I want to ask you about, and this is probably going to be in the title of this episode, the money keywords. You keep talking about money keywords in most of your LinkedIn posts. It makes a lot of sense. Just explain the concept. What are they?
Yeah. So it's basically doing the opposite of what we talked about earlier. So it's not going after those informational traffic heavy keywords. It's actually often doing the complete polar opposite, going after these keywords that typically have less search volume. So if you go onto a tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush or Ubersuggest, they're going to be lower on the search volume side, but higher on the sales intent. So we like to call them money keywords. I'm not the only person that does it, but it basically means these keywords are much more likely to drive sales calls or signups or demos, because a potential client is not searching it on Google for fun or to educate themselves. They're searching it because they're actively interested in investing in the offer or your potential product or solution. And they're usually a bit longer tail. So if we let's go to the proposal software space, for example, it might be searching for something like best proposal software or best proposal tools, or we think of competitor keywords, it might be Proposify alternatives or Quiller alternatives or PandaDoc alternatives. Or if you're comparing two options, as many folks in the SaaS space or in B2B in general, they weigh up 3, 4, 5 vendors on their shortlist before they make a decision internally. So they might search for stuff like PandaDoc versus Quiller or that kind of stuff. Or it might be offer for industry, like best proposal software for sales teams or for fintech or HR teams. So it's basically taking the time, and we can dive through this process, but it's taking the time to work out what would an ideal client profile search when they're likely to want a sales conversation, and let's exhaust every avenue around that.
Right. So starting with the customer and their need. Also, you mentioned SEO tools and looking at lower volume keywords, but that also means they're not as competitive as the high volume ones, where everyone is trying to fight in that space. So if you find, I haven't used those tools. It's been a while. I haven't been a full SEO person for a long time, but let's say the keyword difficulty is under 20, under 30, even if the volume is low, if that's your money keyword, this is really what you should be focusing on and spending time on. Because if you rank there, life gets easier and getting everything else done is easier. Yeah, I really like that concept. And I know you have an example that you mentioned where you outranked HubSpot in 50 days. I assume going after the money keywords.
Yeah, exactly. So this was quite a fun one. This was with one of my friends called George Koudenaris. He runs a show called the B2B Playbook. I've been on a few times now, and basically wanted to do an experiment. And he was like, well, Sam, you've rambled on about SEO for a while. I've seen your stuff, but let's see if you can actually do it. So this was a while back now. This was like 6-7 months ago at the time of recording. And they basically provide a demand generation course. So he was throwing all these search terms at me, and I was like, we probably want to rank for demand gen course and demand generation course. It makes the most sense because that's probably what they target in-house B2B marketers. It's probably what they'd search if they need the offer. So we agreed that. The good thing was that his site was on WordPress already, so it was relatively easy for him to throw out some landing page templates. So we agreed the search term. It had relatively low, I can't remember what it was, but it was relatively low search volume globally, but which was okay because he kind of takes on clients from all over, like US, UK, EU. They do cohorts where they take on like 10 marketers at a time and do like I think it's a 10-12 week course. So we agreed that. We put together a landing page template, but what we did was, there's a very simple strategy that I call the blow out the water strategy. And all you do is go onto Google, quite literally search for the search term you're trying to rank for. And in this case, demand generation course, demand gen course, and similar. I think the top rankings were like HubSpot, CXL, Cognism, and a couple others. So the easiest way is to analyze like the top 3-4 organic pages, what's ranking well at the moment, and look for gaps in how they're constructed. So I suppose a few things to consider. One is we saw that what was ranking well was landing pages. So the first thing you've got to do is assess the intent behind the prospect. So what do they expect to see, and what does Google favor for your target money keyword? In this case, landing pages were ranking well, so we agreed we had to build a landing page. But it could be if you're going after like competitor alternatives, then it could be a listicle, like we reviewed the top 10 Calendly alternatives to 2025, or it could be a product breakdown or something else. But this was a landing page, so we did that. We looked at how those pages were constructed. Like the CXL one was quite long form, but I think their course was actually out of date, so we knew that. We saw that those pages kind of had a video at the top. We saw that they walked through the course structure. They maybe had 1 or 2 testimonials, and then they had an FAQ section at the bottom, but they were all quite thin. They weren't quite super comprehensive. So one of my favorite structures when it comes to building pages, because a lot of SEO is talking about kind of how you can rank, but one of the most important things is to actually resonate with your dream clients. So to really show that you understand their world, you understand their frustrating problems, the impact of not fixing that problem, you understand their jobs to be done, their goals, their motivations, and you clearly position your product as your solution as the painkiller to those, layering on that with proof, with trust signals, and I guess cohering to Google's framework, EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, trust, which is almost common sense really. Because if you're building out a landing page, you want it to rank, but at the same time, you don't want someone to just land on it and think, this is full of AI mumbo jumbo. We actually want them to think, actually, this person or this business or this software understands my world, and they've taken the time to understand my problems, and they're well equipped to solve them. So that was what we did. We analyzed kind of the HubSpot page, the CXL page, the Cognism page, kind of looked how they were constructed and thought, how can we one-up these pages in basically every way possible? Word count is something you can look at, but I wouldn't hold yourselves too tight to word count. Like try and keep it similar to what they are. Maybe ramp yours up a little bit is what I'd probably do. And then, so in that case, when it came to actually building out the page, there's probably one point I should mention on technical SEO. So I'm one of those sick SEO people that say a lot of technical SEO is complete BS, especially as so many, especially clients we work with, right? Like so many B2B and so many SaaS websites are thin on content. Like especially folks that haven't done much SEO, like you're talking like 10, 20 page websites max, like home, about, product, results, book a demo, and maybe a small blog.
Terms and privacy policy. Let's just don't forget those unsung heroes.
That's a push, but yeah, it's right. Very true. So most B2B and SaaS websites are thin on content, and if a SEO agency is like telling you to do an extensive audit and to mess around with image alt tags and stuff like that, it's a complete waste of time. It's not really until you get to hundreds or even thousands of pages that stuff is actually going to be worthwhile. And yes, you want a quick loading website, and yes, you want it to work nicely on mobile, tablet, PC. Like that's common sense in 2025 and beyond. But aside from that, the main thing you want to worry about from a technical perspective is if you've got your target keywords. So our money keyword was demand generation course. So all we had to do was kind of go have that in our URL. So in this case, the B2B playbook / demand -generation -course. Weave that into the meta title and description. So we like to do like a clickbaity meta title, like, I don't know, the ultimate demand gen course to scale MQLs or scale SQLs for 2025, something like that.
That's not even clickbaity. That's just common sense, I would say.
Yeah, it's just to entice the click, right? Just so it's not boring.
A lot to unpack there. One thing you said about technical SEO, and I did technical SEO for more than a few years. I could not agree more. Like if you have 5 pages, technical SEO is about increasing efficiency of Googlebot crawling your website. If you have 5 pages, what are we talking about? What kind of efficiency? Like what does it need to do that it hasn't done 3 times since this morning, I guess, Googlebot, if your website has any kind of traffic. So I completely agree with that. I think it's a complete waste of time for small websites. Please don't even think about it. As long as it loads in a reasonably fast time, like it doesn't have to be super fast, it needs to be not super slow. That's a really big difference there. Mm-hmm. As long as the images are not broken, as long as you have meta titles and meta descriptions, just focus on something else. Like really do whatever else. Content, I guess, is the best bet. Also, when you talked about reverse engineering, what works, what the top ranking pages are, this is one thing that a lot of people outside of SEO, I believe, are not thinking. It's not just about the saying what your competitors are saying, but saying it better. It's about top 5 pages. What's the format? Is it a listicle? Is it a landing page? This really matters because it shows that Google thinks for this kind of intent, this is the best kind of page. And that, I think, often gets left out of the SEO conversation.
Yeah, agreed. So actually getting the page right. And there is a weird thing you can do that we've done for some of our clients. Actually, there's 2 weird things you can do. One is we've actually ranked pages position 1 and position 2 for money keywords by doing 2 different formats. So like sometimes going to page intent, it'll be a mix of landing pages and listicles. So we've actually ranked a SaaS client for an alternative keyword. This was like competitor alternative with a landing page, and then straight underneath we reviewed the top 10 X alternatives. That is lesser known, and not many do that, but that can work when like page 1 is a mix of listicles and landing pages. So that's something to consider. It's got to be done carefully, but it can work.
Of course. Let's talk about competitive keywords, because I think most people, and this podcast is not strictly an SEO podcast, it's an optimization podcast, digital optimization, mostly talking about CRO, experimentation, testing. There are SEO episodes, obviously, like this one. Keyword competitiveness is really what even the non-SEO people are aware of. Like, is this going to be difficult to rank for? So how do you overcome the challenges of having difficult keywords? You mentioned going for the long tail a little bit, but can you give me some more examples?
Yeah, I guess it's being realistic. So thinking
that's a great answer.
Yeah, it's thinking like, has our website been around very long? Do we have much authority? Have we earned many solid backlinks, which is not something we've talked about yet, and kind of improve that domain rating or domain authority? Not that that's the be all and end all, but it certainly helps. And then if we're trying to rank for like these crazy keywords, like in the calendar space, best calendar scheduling software, on the proposal space, like best proposal software, like, are we being realistic? Like, is that something we can do now? Or are we better off building a best-in-class page, following that process I outlined earlier, and then looking to slowly chip away at that over the next 12 months or so? And then in the meantime, let's corner off some competitor keywords, like alternative keywords. Maybe let's go for some offer plus industry keywords, like best proposal software for sales teams, HR teams, fintech, whatever our focus industries are. And then maybe doing some top funnel, like jobs to be done keywords as well, which can build up something called topical authority. So if you're trying to rank a landing page for like a money topic, building authority around that with like not just general how-to keywords, but quite specific how-to keywords that are relevant to your prospects' problems. Like in the proposal space, it might be like how to build a sales proposal within Google Docs, or how to build sales quotes that convert into revenue, or basically taking stuff that folks are bringing up as problems on sales calls, then weaving those into useful articles. And then in that article, you say, look, this is probably how you're getting it done now. This is the issue. It's quite slow. It's quite cumbersome. And this is how our product can speed up this workflow, like with a GIF and like showing the aha moment of your product and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So there is,
because of the intent, the user landing on that page is probably already thinking that they have issues with the solution that they're using today, and they're looking for something that's going to be better. If you just convince them in that page, like it's significantly easier to convince a person who thinks that what they have is bad than just any random person looking for any of the solutions.
Yeah, because I used to be guilty of this actually. There is some SEOs that say like top funnel content is completely dead. But I don't think it is. I think it is if you go for really light, easily answerable stuff. But I think if you use the jobs to be done framework and understand what your prospects' struggling moments are by kind of getting those insights from sales calls, CS calls and more, and then you weave those into like quite detailed kind of searches and things that folks really might be struggling with, and then you position your product as a solution, I think those are still useful.
I mean, as a user of the internet, I agree. Like there is use for all those. One final question in this section: how do B2B websites and B2B SEO strategy in general work with the other marketing channels? And how should there be any, when you're planning your B2B SEO, should you be concerned of whatever else is happening elsewhere?
It's a lot to unpack, really. I suppose it depends on where your company stage is at. Like if you're a SaaS or a B2B startup, then SEO might be a good use of your time if there is demand to capture on Google. So if there's a lot of folks searching for your offer and similar on Google, and you've got a bit of resource or you've got a bit of cash that you can either invest with a team, or you've got some marketing resource in-house where they can start kind of building out topics, building out content and ranking for those money keywords and slowly chipping away, it might make sense. And then as to your question, like how does it feed into the wider ecosystem? Then again, it depends on the stage of your company, right? Because if you have the resource or cash to do other things, like we know that at very best, a B2B website is going to convert at like 3 to 5% prospect visitors into inbounds. And so retargeting is quite a smart move. If you can then, in the B2B landscape, retarget those folks on LinkedIn ads, whether that was with branded or thought leader ads, and then kind of keep top of mind for them and the rest of the exec team, that makes sense. Or likewise other ad channels where you can stay on top, or maybe in your blog posts that you're ranking for, you guide folks to, maybe you weave in like embedded YouTube videos on the topic so folks can carry on consuming your content, or you guide them to your podcast, or you guide them to your lead magnet that then signs them up for the newsletter, so then you can keep nurturing them through your ecosystem. So it's all smart stuff to do for sure. Like SEO doesn't work well in a silo, especially for high ticket B2B, because no one wakes up ready to spend 100 grand, 200 grand on a piece of software. At least I didn't yet.
Let me tell you about Elon Musk and people like him.
Oh, yeah.
But I agree. Of course. And a friend who's an SEO told me about this brilliant strategy: expensive software, free plan, but no one's converting. They were just retargeting all of the free plan users aggressively everywhere, and it really led to them coming back to the app and converting to paid users, because of course not more than a few percent, I guess, but it was zero in the past. So if you're using however you're driving people to your B2B SaaS, if you're just using them being in the app to then remarket and then just remind them that you exist, because maybe they just tried it and forgot about it, it works with combining ads with the SEO. But you want to say something? You have a thought on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's actually to the wider B2B ecosystem, which is something my friend Justin Rowe at a company called Impactable talks about all the time. But it's like, because I run this, like I'm the founder of my company, but I run the sales schools as well, which is good in itself because I get to speak to a lot of marketers, understand their problems, like what they're trying to do and all that kind of stuff, and what other marketing channels they're seeing success from, what their growth plans are, what's working, what's not. But there's so many times where I'll speak to someone, they'll be like, on the inquiry form, how did you hear about us? They'll say like LinkedIn or the internet or Google. But when I actually ask,
the internet,
yeah, have you heard of it? And then when I actually ask them again on the call, because I'll always do it, I'll say like, what was your route to stumbling upon me, or like, what made you take the time to fill out our calendar form? Because I know I don't go onto every website and fill out their form. And they'll say stuff like, oh, actually, like on the form it might say podcast, and actually be like, well, I heard you recommended on this podcast, then I Googled around what you do, then I forgot about it for like 5 months, and then I remembered I needed to fix that, then I saw you on LinkedIn, then I followed you, then I subscribed to your newsletter, then I listened to some of your audio podcasts, then I checked you on YouTube. And like there's this crazy up and down messy journey that goes on for weeks or months, and then they eventually take the time and discuss it with their exec team on Slack and then book a call.
And just being there when they have a need for you is really what B2B, but also just the internet and selling stuff on the internet is about.
Yeah.
Because everyone will forget about you tomorrow. Like they just know, unless you're a well-known brand that they knew about already, they will forget about. I don't. It's very rare that someone leaves such a great first impression that people instantly remember who that person from the internet was. It just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad you mentioned the podcast and the YouTube. We'll talk about that a bit later. I have one question for you before we jump to that section, and that's, why are most SEOs considered to be boring? I'm not going to say they are, but when people outside of SEO industry talk about SEOs, it's not fun and games.
Yeah, I think this is from an outsider perspective because I can never know 100%, but I suppose it's because a lot of SEOs specialize and maybe they're very technical. So that's the way they come across when they're posting their content, whether that's LinkedIn or talking on a podcast or on their newsletter, wherever the medium is, or their own blog posts. Or they're kind of biased to one side of SEO. And I suppose I'm fortunate in the sense that my background has always been sales and marketing. I've had various sales roles, and as a marketer, then I became a founder of a web agency, exited out of that and started Breaking B2B. So I've always been of the mindset of kind of a sales focus. That's why so much of what I talk about on LinkedIn, on the podcast, etc., is like, how can we drive impact? How can we drive book calls as quick as possible? Because I know the pain and the frustration of running a business and having leads dry up. Like, there's nothing worse. Like a steady flow of qualified leads is literally the lifeblood of any business, no matter how you spin it. So I suppose that's my mindset. And then the other side of the coin is we're in the attention economy now. So you need to stand out first to stop the scroll if that's on LinkedIn, and then give some either entertainment or educational value. So that's usually what I do. Like, you'll see with my stuff.
We'll talk about that. Look, I don't have enough praise for everything that you do, especially Ask the Public. That is my favorite web series. I told you that in the past. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I don't think SEOs are necessarily boring. I think that the topic of SEO and SEO details and all that, I mean, for a non-SEO person, it could be
That's
boring.
a good point.
So it's not the people, it's just what they're talking about, because long tail keywords, like, that's not a party conversation. Unless it's an SEO party. Let's just be clear about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with anything, right? It's tying it back to product, but it's also tying it back to what the market cares about around your offer. So if I'm just constantly talking about technical SEO or writing blog posts that rank or that kind of stuff, like, it's going to bore the shit out of my audience. Whereas if I actually tie it back to what people care about, generating demos or getting qualified website traffic or reducing churn or stuff that's on revenue leaders' minds.
I'll jump in as a CRO person. This is literally features versus benefits problem on a product landing page. You don't want to talk about the features. You want to talk about the benefits that they'll get from those features. This is literally what you're doing here. You're not talking about the techniques you're using. You're talking about what they will get out of them. And like, that's just the most common sense there is, in my opinion. But I want to talk about the podcast now. I want to talk about Ask the Public. I want to talk about all of the crazy. It is crazy stuff for LinkedIn. It's amazing. You've had 426 episodes of your podcast, and all I can say is wow. So I'm going to ask you, when did you start your podcast? Why did you start your podcast? Why did you rebrand your podcast at one point?
Oh, I've actually rebranded it twice. So
Okay.
I started it in 2020. And it was actually in the pandemic. I think I came up with the idea when you were allowed to like go out a little bit. So in the UK, you were allowed to go out a little bit, and then they closed it down again. And I kind of thought initially, why did I start? I did it as fun. I think since a young kid, I wanted to be a radio presenter.
Oh, nice.
So it's probably that kind of shining through. But I did it out of my own greed. And that was not from a marketing standpoint, not from an SEO standpoint. I just wanted to at the time I wanted to improve my sales skills. So at the time when I started, I was just interviewing sales leaders and entrepreneurs and just asking them about everything I wanted to know about selling. Like, how do you run discovery calls? How do you run presentation calls? How do you run demos? How do you get more sales leads? How do you do outbound sales? All that kind of stuff. Learned a ton. Went from kind of being super nervous on the first 10 episodes, like shaking like crazy, to slowly getting more and more confident, and then eventually being able to, probably like yourself, like, it's one of those things, podcast is really, really strong for improving your communication skills, which then shine through for your sales calls and your customer calls, and then you become like not afraid to push back. And like, if folks give answers that maybe you think are a bit light or a bit fluffy, then it's nice to challenge them. And I think someone who's very good at that is a guy called Louis Grenier, runs I think it's Everyone Hates Marketers or something like that. He's like a masterclass in that because he just doesn't give a shit. But yeah, we did that. I did that for a while, and then eventually thought like we've got a bit of an audience on the audio podcast and on YouTube, but it's not really driving any business value for my company. So then we renamed it once to Business Growth Show for a little bit, and then eventually renamed it to my company Breaking B2B. And that's where we got a bit more serious. So
what was the first name? What's the original name? The first one?
First, the most selfish name ever. So first it was Sam's Business Growth Show.
Hey, come on. It's fine. I'll allow it. But I think the current one is better because it's your company. But come on, that's a cool name.
Yeah. And then it was Business Growth Show, and then eventually Breaking B2B, which is now. And then, I basically thought like I've got 2 kids now. At the time I had my first kid, and I thought I haven't got time to do all the editing and production and marketing and stuff. So I hired my friend to help with that. And I thought now I'm actually paying out quite a lot for equipment, software and production. I need to get some revenue from the show.
Right.
So I thought I'd better flip the focus. So in that case, then I thought I'll interview specifically B2B marketing and SaaS marketing leaders. Like, we won't keep it fluffy. We'll get straight onto a strategy where they can share actionable tips of what's driving growth today. And then also thought I'd do solo episodes. So again, I can share like marketing experiments that I'm running, or SEO tips that we're doing, or unusual kind of B2B plays that we're running. And then slowly but surely started to get like a few inbound leads, and occasionally we pick up sponsors. So podcasting growth, as you know, is not easy. It's really, really tough. We've been doing it for 5 years, and it is very, very slow growth.
It's extremely slow.
Yeah.
People would not believe how slow it is. But also, and I see this as a personal networking tool, first and foremost, the podcast that I'm doing, because my experience is you meet someone through the podcast, or you even don't, and you meet them at a conference, and there's no that awkward, oh my God, hi, I do this. They know you as soon as they see you.
Yeah.
And that makes it easier. You're instantly more approachable to everyone and anyone. And I think it's worth it just for that, but also there are tons of other reasons to actually invest time and money, like you're doing in having a producer, editor, friend. Ask the Public is the last thing I want to ask you about. That series is so good. You just had one. I'll share that on my LinkedIn. You just had one where you asked people about SEO in Bristol, and they were all, I don't know, SEO PhDs. I don't know how you found them in the streets, but it just happened to be the most knowledgeable group of SEO people randomly found in the streets ever.
It was mental. Like I was telling you just now, like, it was one of the worst. We recorded this last week, that series, and it was the first 20 minutes. No one in the streets wanted to talk to me, so it was like 20, 30 minutes of rejection. And I was like, oh, God. Need someone to talk to me, or we're going to have no footage to chop up here. But yeah, I was asking a bunch of questions around, do you use ChatGPT to search? Do you trust AI answers or Google answers more? And Google still seems to clinch it. And then the one I asked on the video you saw was, is Google dead? And surprisingly, even a lot of the kind of younger folks were saying no. They were saying like ChatGPT is great for certain information queries, but they still want to cross-check it against Google. Then a lot of the older folks, not all of the older folks, some still used AI tools, but a lot of the older folks were like, we always go to Google. There was one person that used Brave search engine, which I've never used myself.
That's a brave choice.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. So yeah, it was funny, like how intuitive some of these, like one lady we interviewed even started going off about 2 minutes about AI overviews. And I was like, well, didn't expect that.
Amazing. What was the idea with that series when you started? When did you start it, actually?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was probably about a year, probably just when I started this company about a year ago. I was watching, there's a B2C series on YouTube called The School of Hard Knocks, where this guy basically goes up to usually places like Beverly Hills or kind of high net worth locations where you're likely to find entrepreneurs in the US. And he'll like, excuse me, sir, excuse me, miss, like, what do you do for a living? And then just have this like 10-minute conversation with them, diving down to their business, how they got rich, what they recommend for the younger generation. I thought, this is awesome. Like, no one is doing this in B2B. I don't think any marketer is going to be brave enough or stupid enough, apart from me, to try this. So I thought, let's do it. Like literally the next week, I called my friend Ben and said, like, I've got this idea. And yeah, it just took off. There is actually one or two other people since that have tried to take the concept I've seen. So people have just started to take, I think they call it like man on the street or something like that. But no, it's
the highest form of flattery.
Exactly, but I don't mind, like, exactly. But the good thing about it is what we talked about before. It's memorable.
Yep.
And
also, the first frame is always you standing in an awkward pose. I don't know if that's intentional. It probably is. So when you see that and there's a person with a microphone, usually, like, you don't have the best weather. It's never like a sunny beach. It's always cloudy. It's always gray, mostly. Even when it's sunny outside, it's kind of gray. But that, and then it just starts. I have to stop and watch it every single time. It's the best hook on LinkedIn, and people try all kinds of hooks on LinkedIn. That is the one that absolutely works in my opinion. And just please keep doing those.
I appreciate it, man. We've got a funny new one that we're going to do soon as well, which should hopefully be as comical, if not more.
I can't wait. Sam, thank you so much for everything you're doing on LinkedIn, with the podcast, YouTube, and for being a great guest on No Hacks. Final question, where can people find you?
No, really appreciate it. Enjoyed the chat. Thanks very much for having me. So yeah, there's three main ways. One is LinkedIn, Sam Dunning, where we share daily tips, stories, and ask the public videos around SEO and B2B marketing. The second is the Breaking B2B podcast. So that's weekly actionable episodes, either guest interviews or solo episodes. Or the third is if you've maybe tuned in to me rambling on so far and maybe you're feeling a bit frustrated that competitors are always ahead of you on Google search results, stealing traffic and inbound leads, we might be able to fix it with our unusual approach to SEO and content marketing. So you can book a call at breakingb2b.com.
Excellent. One more question. Does the name have anything to do with Breaking Bad?
I feel like that might have been on my mind. And
Okay.
also there's a podcast called Breaking Beard. And I
Okay.
think I was just subliminally like tuning into both those things. But at the time, I was looking up all these domains on GoDaddy one weekend. So I was like, broken B2B, B2B is broken. And I literally registered, like paid for 10 domains just because I wanted to secure them all, trying to think of this business name. And then eventually, like the next day it clicked, Breaking B2B. And I was quite surprised the domain was free because I only registered it last
name.
year.
It's a great name.
So I lucked out.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
That was incredible. I'm sure you'll learn from Sam as much as I did, if not even more. And Breaking B2B, go ahead and check out his podcast. Follow Sam on LinkedIn. A lot to learn from him, and enjoy Ask the Public series. It's just that good. And finally, please consider rating, reviewing, and sharing this episode if you find it useful. And I will talk to you next week.